So here we are. Sorry for a couple minutes of technical uh, tweak. What we're going to cover today, basically talking a little bit about the APIs, like I said, just going through some of the most used APIs. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat, and we'll just do our best to answer them. So everybody's been muted. If you have any queries, put them in the chat, please, and we'll try to answer them at the end. If you have any questions, and obviously, if you want to have a bit more discussions, we can always talk later, set up a little chat over a Zoom call or something. So if you're having any issues when it comes to seeing things, I mean, we recommend that you close everything else because sometimes it's a little bit, heavy on the CPUs. Let's jump right in. And I wanted to give you a little bit of background in numbers because before we talk about the APIs themselves, and it's the next slide, don't worry, guys, we're going to talk about that. But I wanted to give you a little bit of background on, basically the private label channel managers and how this has been actually evolving in the last couple of years. Sue is about 4 years old. We're based on the technology from Star, which is about 15 years old. So, we started with the XML, as many of you know. Some of you might still be using it if you're on-premise, for example, PMS. A lot of on-premise PMS still use XML, but we've now moved on to JSON. Obviously, much easier, much faster, also in terms of managing data. So that's the technology we use right now. That's what we recommend as well to use. And we're also in the process of moving from servers to serverless applications as we are using AWS, which is obviously making the system a lot more flexible, reliable, scalable. And we're also building a new platform infrastructure, which is going to be a lot faster in terms of loading screens, in terms of managing the data that we get from partners and send over to OTAs. So, it's just a faster processing, better load control, monitoring, and all this, which, we're basically building this way because, as we're growing and seeing an increasing amount of data transiting, we also have to challenge ourselves. So, it's not just building a channel manager and basically providing APIs. It's a lot more in the background, but I wanted to mention it because I think it's important to know who you're talking to as well. Just a couple of numbers, that I just got from the team. 70,000 bookings a day are managed through the platform, and 8 million ARI a day are actually managed. So that just gives you a bit of an idea of what's actually managed by that platform itself. So let's jump right in. We have basically two slides on APIs. And the first one is not revolutionary, but because we're fully API driven, I wanted to mention that and explain what basically what that entails. And then the second slide is going to deeper into APIs that are optional, basically, but that a lot of our partners have decided to build based on different reasons, but usually for a better ease of use, better comfort for the hotels themselves. So we'll go through that. Basically, the first fives are mandatory, and basically why? Because the API is the platform is fully API driven. So that means that you can't really create a hotel or create room types, rate plans, ARI into the platform itself. Why? Because then you have a single point of update, and that stays the PMS or whatever it is, your PMC system, whatever. But basically, your system stays in control. That's what I call the source of truth. Basically, you own the data. You send it over to us. We transit the data to the OTAs, but never do we allow anyone to manually input. That actually is a big guarantee of reliability because then there is no way to actually push data from another means. And that avoids discrepancies, disconnections. Basically, I've worked for other tech companies where it wasn't that easy. So I know what it feels like when you have a booking engine channel manager connecting to a series of PMSs, and you have two ways to actually update. That can create a lot of problems. So the platform is fully API driven. And basically, we have APIs to create the property, but not only create, but update, remove the property as needed. And in that API itself, you have some mandatory data, obviously the property ID, name, a couple of more things, but then you have a lot of additional optional data. which can be images for the property, amenities, descriptions, address, GPS coordinates, etc. So, that API can actually help also first generate a lot of content into the platform. Even if you have not built content APIs to OTAs, if you build that APIs fully, then you also push a lot of data into the platform, which basically prepares for later and basically managing content. Room type and rate plan, they're intimately intricated with each other, but basically we have an API specific to creating room types, updating them, deactivating them, and that's the same for the rate plans. And they basically cross-reference. So you basically create as many room types as you need, you create as many rate plans as you need, and then you can assign rate plans to room types. So you can also create a rate plan that's exclusive to one room type. Basically, you have a suite and you want to create a rate plan that's more of a package deal. You can basically create that rate plan only for that suite. So there's a lot of flexibility in it, but we have different APIs for that. And then we have the ARI, basically everything related to availability, rates, restrictions for rooms and rate plans. That's another one. That actually manages three types of pricing: the occupancy-based pricing, the room-based pricing, and now we have equipped the platform to manage length of stay pricing. And we now have also booking.com that is compatible with that. We're also building new channels that are going to be compatible with length of stay, but the platform itself is compatible with length of stay, because you might know how this is managed, but basically it is focused a lot more on availability than rates. And it basically assigns a price per availability, and you basically send a length of stay with a price attached. So that is, the platform has been built and modified in order to be compatible with that as well. And obviously the reservation, the booking retrieval, which makes sense, but we have to think about it. We recommend the push mode, obviously, because as cloud systems, that's the easiest and most efficient way to do it. But we still have partners that are using the pull. Some are still based on XML because they built the platform a few years ago. And on-premise systems, for example, use pull as well a lot, because then we store the data on our end and they come and get it whenever they want, whether it's every 3 minutes, every minute, when there is a disconnection, they can actually come and get it. And we basically store the data until we get a confirmation of receipt from the PMS. You can also build a hybrid mode if you want to have a push system and then also have a pull built in case you disconnect and basically can come and fetch the data. You can also do that. So we're very flexible when it comes to that, but basically pull, push, hybrid, anything is available. So those are the top 5 APIs, and that is actually what I call the minimum viable product, the MVP. That is what you need to basically connect your PMS to a white label channel manager. You don't need anything else, because even when it comes to mappings, and I'll discuss that a little bit later, you do have frames that allow you for mapping. You can use an iframe, but you can even just use the extranet. So in order to make that work, all you need is that 5 APIs. Usually build time can be a few weeks up to maybe a month or two, depending on how much manpower you put on that. The average time would be, I'd say, 4 to 6 weeks. So that's to build those 5. Then we have additional APIs that have, we've made a selection of. Those are the most used by the partners that we work with, or the most requested also by hotels. The rates and inventory control, the number 6, is a very interesting one, but it's pretty much, to me, a mandatory one, which allows you to customize the inventory and price you send per channel per room type. Example, you have basically your hotel connected to Booking, Expedia, Airbnb. Maybe your hotel doesn't want to send full inventory to all the channels. So they have 10 rooms of the double. They may want to send 5 to Booking and 5 to Expedia. And maybe they want to have full inventory on Airbnb. So that actually API allows you to customize the inventory and the rates that you send. Maybe you don't want to send the same rate to Airbnb, Booking, and Expedia because for whatever reason, the hotel just wants to send a different price because they just don't pay commission on one and they pay commission on the other, whatever it is. But basically, that API is very useful because it just allows to customize the way you're going to be sending rates, not by channel, but by room type and rate plan. Then we have put together two APIs on the number 7, and that's the reporting part of the APIs, which are invalid CC and cancellation due to invalid CC. As you know, a hotel that gets an invalid credit card from Booking.com, for example, I'll mention Booking because that's the most advanced, and don't get me wrong, I don't get any commissions, but that API is very, very complete, so it's usually a good example. But when you get an invalid credit card from a customer on a Booking.com reservation, you have to basically go to the extranet to report it. But we also have APIs to do this. And to be honest, to make life easy for the hotel, if they realize that credit card is wrong because they've tested it, usually Booking.com is supposed to request a new one. So if you have that API set up, all they have to do is report it as invalid, and then Booking.com will actually ask the guest to provide a new one. They have a lead time to do that. You also have, in addition to that, an API that allows you to cancel due to invalid CC. So basically, the hotel that has an invalid credit card and has reported it after a few hours, maybe it's a very busy time of the year, and they don't want to leave that room booked because the credit card is invalid. They don't even know if they're going to get another credit card anytime soon. They may want to cancel it. So we also have an API that allows them to cancel. So we've regrouped those two because we think that this is actually extremely convenient for hotels. Anything that they have to do manually in the extranet that is available through APIs, and that is kind of a recurring problem, issue that they face, should actually be considered. That's one of them. Messaging API as well. Basically, we have a few partners that allow messaging APIs. Basically allows you to build a unified mailbox. When you're looking at Booking.com, Airbnb that have basically messaging APIs, you can also, on your end, thanks to those APIs, build a unified mailbox where your property is going to receive all the messages from different OTAs that you've connected, and basically will be able to read those messages, but also respond to them. So they don't have to log into the extranet as well. Very useful, obviously. Especially now that you have all those anonymized emails and things like that. So otherwise, the property has to log into each OTA and respond to customers. So not super convenient. Another very interesting and useful one is the no-show API. I mean, just kind of in the same line as the invalid CC, when a hotel has a no-show, as much as I do, they have to report it right away. Otherwise, they'll pay commissions. So basically, we have an API that allows the hotel to report a no-show to the OTA. Simple, but very useful as well. The hotel doesn't want to have to log into the system and basically say, well, the customer didn't show up, so I don't want to pay this commission. So we have an API for this. Super useful as well. Other hotels use it, and they're just making life easier. The 10th one is the Get API for reservations. I mean, sometimes you might actually have to go and fetch data just to double check things, or if you want to just get a report of all the bookings that basically the hotel had on XYZ OTA. So we have APIs that basically help pull basic info on existing bookings for a time frame. So basically, the hotel wants to know and wants to ping and get all the bookings for a week, a month, whatever. So they basically have a call that is returning the booking ID, the dates, status, check-in, check-out, channel ID, whatever. So basically, they get a list of all that, and that makes their life so much easier because when you're looking at different bookings you receive, just making sure that no shows have been basically impacted on your bookings and things like that. That get API for a reservation is basically pinging the system and asking to send the data. Very useful as well. I've added one as a bonus, which is the failed update API. I mean, this is more for the PMS itself, but when you're sending updates to the system, obviously you have all the data in the extranet, but we also have an API that allows you to ping and basically make sure that all the data that has been sent has been updated, and you get a report on anything that's been failed. So very useful as well, because I mean, you can also check it, but if you get the data and you know that something went wrong at some point, obviously, you don't have to go in the extranet. And we have a bunch of logs that you can also build that are very useful, that can actually allow you to build a UI for all the logs that you get in the system. Because that system basically becomes yours. And you didn't build the entire thing yourself, but you also want to get access to all the logs, any updates, anything like that. So we have logs for many things. Just updates, obviously, but error logs and all kind of stuff that is available in the system that you can actually build up as well. I haven't listed all the logs that you can actually build through API, but this is also a very exhaustive list of things that you can build that can help you also have a lot more control on what you see and how you manage things. So that being said, we talked about the APIs, but there's also something I wanted to talk about, which is related to APIs, and that's how you actually do the mapping. And basically, you have technically three ways of doing mapping. Extranet, obviously, we give you an extranet, you have access to it, you can do the mapping in there. And then we have the most used ways, iframe, that can be integrated into your system through a CSS, or mapping APIs. And I wanted to have a little pro and cons because we always get the question of, how easy is it to integrate the iframe, and what can we do with the iframe, and basically what would you recommend to use the mapping API? So I want to give you a little bit of advice based on basically what we see, what are the discussions that we have. So the iframe is obviously has a lot of advantages because it's already built. We build it ourselves, we maintain it, we improve it as we go. The last version is the self-serve that's coming out in a couple of months, and basically it's been improved and simplified. It's always customized per channel, so that's very important. If a channel requires a specific information or a specific setup, you'll have it in the screen with all the help so that you actually know exactly how to map, and you don't have to build it. It basically is available for you. All you have to do is to take it, put it into your PMS. You can basically customize it. And basically it becomes fully private. It just integrates into your system. So that's the good news about the iframe. Then the not so good news is that it's limited in terms of functionality. You manage mostly ARI. I mean, some of the channels, it goes a little bit further. For example, Airbnb, we're trying to match anything available through the mapping API in the iframes. But that takes a lot of work. It's actually in the works, but it's not fully done yet. And usually you have no messaging, no content, nothing like that. So it's very related to mapping alone, ARIs. So the iframe is good as a starter point. It's usually obviously a starter time to market. If you build the platform and it takes you a month and a half, you integrate the iframe, you can just go live and start rolling out hotels and then get access to a bunch of channels very quickly. So that's a good solution, I would say, as an entry point. And mapping API may be considered for the top channels. If you actually see, you have quite a few hotels. 90% of them are going to connect to Booking.com and Airbnb, for example. Then I would recommend that you build the mapping API for those two channels at least. Why? Because then you can basically automate most of the process with those channels, because you're going to set them up for pretty much all the hotels. And then the iframe can be used for all the secondary channels where not all hotels are going to be connecting to them. So obviously the mapping API is available for a bit more than 40 channels, mostly the top ones, some smaller ones as well. But basically you have very cool functions. Booking.com, you can have automatic registration directly on Booking.com. So you push all the data. It's a full sync content, pricing, creating the rates on Booking.com, and basically they return you the ID from the hotel, and all you have to do is to tell the hotel to sign the contract. So, Booking.com, very advanced. If you don't have your own and you plan on using a white label channel manager and using Booking.com, I truly recommend that you look at the mapping API. Airbnb, not as advanced, but as we know on Airbnb, lots of small properties, sometimes they only use Airbnb. So the content is already on Airbnb. You want to onboard them on your PMS because they come to you and they've decided to use your system. Then you can go and fetch the content from Airbnb. That's what we call the reverse content. So very cool stuff as well, because that BNB that comes to you or apartment manager has a couple of properties on Airbnb, alone only on Airbnb. You can go and fetch the content. So you have a much less work to do in setting up that property. Obviously, messaging, review APIs depends really on the channels itself, but it automates a large part of the content update, rate management in most part, and it keeps evolving. On a regular basis, we do add functionalities. We're actually looking at how we can kind of make the image management a little better in order to basically update and add, remove pictures on the OTA. We're looking at unifying the way amenities are managed. I mean, those kind of things that have been basically fed back to us by partners or potential partners. And when we don't do that, then we look at what's available and then we keep improving things. So obviously we don't have all the APIs for all the OTAs, but if anything is missing, we always look at it and try to add it. Then the not so good news is that basically if you decide to go for the mapping API and you want to go full blown, then you have to basically build your own UI. So you can keep using the iframe for the small ones, but if you start having a big chunk of OTAs that are managed through the mapping API, then you also have to think of how you're going to build that UI and have a screen that can be used either by your teams or by the properties themselves. And obviously, it's not a magic trick as well. Each OTA allows a set of APIs. For example, VRBO allows content, but it's not as advanced as what you would find on Airbnb or Booking.com, for example. So, each channel will have its limitations. Obviously, the top 5, 10 are more advanced, and then the other ones will allow a little bit of content management and things like that, but it's usually not as advanced. But we have all the details also. If you want to take a look, we have the APIs available to take a look and see if what you're looking for is also available from each of the partners, the OTAs that we connect to. So that being said, basically just to sum up, the system as a private channel manager is fully API driven. I think that's pretty clear. I've mentioned it a couple of times, but it's also completely transparent. So you basically get a system that becomes your own. You are in control. You have an extranet. You have APIs. You can basically use it as if you build it. It will help you grow because the time to market is extremely shorter than what you would experience if you built all those channels on your own. And obviously, you get access to, at this point, 225 direct connects, but altogether more than 1,000 channels. Because in those integrations, we do have a lot of wholesalers, aggregators, which have sometimes 200, 300 channels in the background. So we've also enlarged the reach, and basically you will be getting access to close to 2,000 channels by the end of this year, with all we have in progress. So I mean that's always a good way to get access to all those small channels that basically not too many want to build direct to, because they're very local, they're very specialized regional channels, and obviously much better to go through aggregators or people like Hyperguest, TXGB, Travel Plan, Royboss, all those guys. So we have connections to those guys as well, and many times they customize by region. So we give you access to that as well. And obviously, last slide, just so you know, support is 24/6, so every day, all day, except for Sundays. So this is something we've launched a couple months ago. But that is very useful because we have partners all across the world, and I know on this call there's people from pretty much all over the world as well. So whatever you need, if you're working with a solution like Sue, you're basically getting support across around the clock. Whether you're working day, night, whatever the time zone is, you always have someone to answer you. That's about it for me. So I don't know if there are any questions at all. If you guys want to post them in the Q&R. I don't think I see anything. Valerio, I don't know if you've been tracking and
No,
if you have okay, okay,
there's one coming now.
okay. Ali, okay. When our customers give permission to PMS from the OTA, for example, should they search SUE API as a company? No, so yeah, that's a very, very good question. So we have there's three ways. Basically, the obviously we appear as star on some channels, usually the smaller ones, those that are very regional and small, because they don't offer any kind of white label solution at all. But for the biggest ones, and for the most part, we have a very large selection of channels that are using either our white label, which is OTA switch. I'll write it here, OTA switch. And they basically pick OTA switch on the OTA side, which actually connects to the platform. And then it's basically fed to the right channel, to the right partner. But also, if you have a minimum number of properties for Booking.com, for example, you can also get your own white label. So you can get your own name. Some will impose a minimum number of properties and some don't. As far as I know, Booking.com will ask for 100 properties. If you know you're going to reach 100 properties, we can even have it created ahead of time so that your hotels will basically pick your own brand on the back office of the OTA. But Expedia, Agoda, Trip.com, all those guys will give you your own name. I don't think there are any restrictions to obtain it. We basically process it with them and you get access to that. Your brand appears on the OTA side and the hotels can pick your own brand to connect to the channel manager. So it could be PMS name, channel manager, whatever the name of their solution is. But then by default, we already have a white label, which is called OTA switch, which they can pick, not knowing who's behind, really. So yeah, that's a very good question because this is also something we focus on, and we keep actually going to OTAs to improve the list of those that provide either your own name or OTA switch, because obviously we still have some that appear as star. But they're usually the smaller ones because not all OTAs will. Airbnb, yes, Airbnb will use at minimum OTA switch. I don't think they will give you your own name, but they will definitely give you access to the OTA switch name, which is a white label. Nobody knows who's behind it. So yeah, Airbnb also applies. All the major ones, I would say. You're welcome. Any further questions? Any other questions from anyone attending today? I don't see anything else. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for showing up. I mean, this was a pretty big attendance, so thanks a lot for the interest. I hope this was of interest to you. It helped understand, how this works and what seems to be basically what most of the partners set up in terms of APIs that make the life easier. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Basically, you can reach out to me, and we will set up a quick call if you have any questions. And we will also send you the recording of the session, so you will be getting the recording by email. Okay. Thanks a lot, and let's meet you in another webinar, probably in a month or so. All right. Thank you. Bye bye.